Welcome to the Heart of Business podcast, sponsored by International Facilitators Organization, the marketplace for facilitators. I'm your host, Mo Fathelbab, president of International Facilitators Organization, and today our guest is Justin Ricklefs, founder and CEO of Guild Collective. Welcome, Justin.
Hey, thanks, Mo. It's I've been looking forward to this all week, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, I'm excited to have you on as well. I heard bits of your story, and I want to take advantage of this time to share it with our audience because I think they're going to learn something and get inspired. So I want to go back to the beginning, Justin. What was
Sure.
your first entrepreneurial venture? The first thing you did to make money? Maybe it was a job. Where did it all begin?
Oh boy, yeah. I mean, the very first was I went to the University of Missouri, and I was there from 1999 to 2003. And at the time, this is pre. We had cell phones, but they were flip phones, and you had buttons on them and all the stuff, right? But at the time, you had to literally go to a computer lab to access the internet because nobody had MacBooks. I mean, again, dating myself here, obviously. And at that point in time, this is pre StubHub. There's no like major online ticketing broker accounts or platforms. And I had a part-time job for this company called Show Me Tickets. And so on Saturday mornings, we'd go to the Mizzou computer lab and they would literally hand out strips of paper with credit card numbers and we would buy tickets for them. And so we'd buy whatever, Tim McGraw or Kenny Chesney or whatever and Madonna, and we'd use their credit cards, we'd buy tickets, and then they'd sell them. And at some point, I'm like, wait, I should just do this for myself. And so I did. So we started buying concert and sporting event tickets on the internet at the computer lab, and we would sell them on eBay. And that was a good little. And my wife and I got married in 2003, right as I was finishing up college, and so we did that for a while, kind of quote unquote side hustle until I way overextended on a Madonna show at Madison Square Garden in New York, and it didn't go great. It ended poorly, but that was the first taste of like, oh, you can have a thing, and then sell a thing for more than you bought it for, and that was my first entrepreneurial journey, right? Kind of middle college and through the end of college.
What a great story. And I also love the part where it didn't go well because that's where we learn, that's where we grow. So
That's
what
right.
happened? You bought too many tickets?
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, the fuller story is that this was, it was, oh, we'll have to Google it to find out exactly the dates. It was 2003, 2004, and she had not been on tour for a long time. And so she announced these tour dates, and it was like one show at Madison Square Garden, one show in Chicago, one show in LA, or whatever. And so I was like, dude, we're buying New York. We're going to get whatever tickets we can get because she's going to sell out fast, right? And so, sure enough, she did sell out Madison Square Garden fast. And we bought, and Mo, I might get the numbers a little bit wrong, but it's pretty close to like $30,000 of face value tickets.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they released another show, which the tour promoters probably all knew in advance, but the general public was like, to create demand. So the first show sells out, and then she launches the second. And it's like, well, okay, we probably should buy some for the second one too. And so we buy some for the second. And again, I'll get the details a little bit wrong, but I think she ended up playing like 5 to 7 shows at Madison Square Garden, and the secondary ticket market just plummeted because all of a sudden there's a ton of demand and not as much, or a ton of supply and not as much demand. And so we were selling, again, rough numbers, call it a $200 face value ticket that I thought we were going to sell for like 1,000. We were
Mm.
selling for like $30. And so it was, I mean, honestly, bad news. Like we were 30K ish upside down. And most of that was on a credit card. And I was a newlywed, and my wife was like, wait a minute, man.
Oh,
So
and just
thank
graduated
goodness.
from college as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Are you still
yeah,
in
yeah.
college?
Yeah, graduated from college. I had a full-time job, but like this was kind of the side hustle money. And yeah, I mean, I remember it was tough for me to tell the truth in that moment because it was not great. And it was a lot more fun when it's like, hey, we made, $200 on a Cubs game or whatever. But in this particular case, it was like, this is actually really bad. It's a devastating reality. And man, she's hung in with me through a lot of twists and turns over the 23 years, but she's my much better half for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And how long did it take you to recover? So this is a big hiccup early on.
This is so funny. Haven't told, I don't think I've told this story much. I've written about it before on my blog way back in the day, but
Yeah,
it took a long time. Like I think the the day job I had was, at the time I was working for a catering company, and I was helping him do everything from events to his fraternity business. And so and then I broke into the sports industry and I worked for the University of Missouri. And so it was somewhere in that landscape where honestly we just started chipping away at the debt. We started just, hey, if the minimum payment was $200, we paid 300, or we did what we could to try to accelerate the debt. Or we probably listened to a Dave Ramsey show or two of the debt snowball, you know.
yeah.
But at some point you had to face we had to face the reality that it was messy, that it was not an awesome ending, that there was some level of, you know, shame and embarrassment, and this didn't go great. And then she saw the best parts of me, and I received her grace and compassion, and we just started digging out of it. And I do think I'll have to remember some of the specifics. I do think we took a couple calculated risks again on some tickets, because there was at that time a lot of upside to it. I'm sure there still is, but I'm not in that business anymore. And so there were a few wins that we could accelerate that snowball. But yeah, the long and short was you keep, you know, the sun keeps coming up, and even when it's a pretty tough reality, there is a way to create a different future. And so we just dug out of it.
Well, that is the entrepreneurial mindset, right? The sun's going to come up again, and I'm going to try again, and we're going to keep going till we make it work.
That's right. That's right. I do think, yeah, I do think it's so true about the entrepreneurial journey, and there's some level of intentional avoidance when you're an entrepreneur, where you're like, yeah, that's going to be a problem, but these other things I've got to deal with right now, and so we'll push this one down a little bit down the line. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's very true, Mo.
So, what was your next venture after that? What was your next entrepreneurial venture?
Well, the next one, you know, I think we did a couple. Man, it's funny you're pulling all these old stories out of me. The So I had a corporate, you know, W-2 job all the way from graduating college all the way up until I started what we're doing now at Guild Collective in 2017. So from '03 to 17. So there's 14 years of what I would consider steady paycheck work, W-2 work. Um, and in hindsight, that feels good. It feels good to get paid no matter what every 2 weeks. And so people with those jobs, it's a great reality for sure. And but throughout the way, you know, we did the ticket thing, and then I mean, I always had these ideas that, in hindsight, some of them I'm like, man, we did some crazy stuff. We tried a couple network marketing companies, and it was like, oh, this is a sure bet thing that you can sell this social media platform, and all of your friends will buy it, and everybody will make $1 million. And it didn't work out like that. And so there's some in my late 20s embarrassing things. I'm like, gosh, I'm not really proud of all of those swings, but they are, again, I wrote a LinkedIn post at some point about all the different things that I've tried to do to make a buck. And and a lot of those are, you know, silly, or they didn't work, or they're bad ideas, and they all mattered though. They all were part of the broader story of leading me to where I am today. And certainly even this will lead me to something else. And so yeah, so we did a couple network marketing things, and then my first actual swing was a little bit of a hybrid. It was, I got a steady paycheck, but I was invited into to be a partner of someone else's business that they started, like a minority, you know, equity partner. And it was actually in that business where I got to see firsthand what it takes, like what an actual entrepreneur goes through and what it's like, and the you know, all the levels of the human experience, both from the positive experiences to the negative ones that are really tricky and fear producing. And that didn't go great. And again, another example of, I thought it was going to be a certain way, and then the reality of it was a lot trickier than that. And that was in 2015. No, it wasn't. It was 2014. I ended up actually getting fired from that job, and there's a longer story about why, but ultimately it's my responsibility to take that particular engagement wasn't the right fit, and but it gave me this taste of oh, there is a way to build a business that's based on care, that's based on value, that's based on connecting to other humans. And it took me, after that experience, 2 more years of working full time for somebody else, that then I got to get clear on launching this business, Guild, and Guild is now almost a decade old. So it's been a good journey.
So I want to talk about Guild in a second here, but it seems like the seeds of entrepreneurship were always there. Did you grow up with entrepreneurs in your family?
Yeah, also a great question, Mo. I didn't have the appreciation for it then. I mean, we grew up very lower middle class. Um, Money was tight. It was never in doubt, but it was also never in abundance. And my mom and dad both had jobs, or had W-2, steady income. My parents got divorced, and as I traced back some of their story, though, they both have entrepreneurial backgrounds. And so my both families came from agriculture backgrounds. So farming is definitely entrepreneurial in its
Yeah.
very nature, right?
Yeah.
There is no, you cannot predict how much it will rain, or if it will rain, or how much the crops will grow, but you can till the soil and pray that it rains.
Yeah.
And so the agricultural background has for sure been in both sides of my family's heritage. And then they actually, early on in their marriage, they started it was a publication. It was a written newspaper for people who owned horses. They called it the horse paper. And in my childhood, it wasn't part of their financial structure. But when they were early on in their marriage, they had taken a swing at building a trade publication. And for several years, they built it. Like, my mom was the editor and did the layout. You used to literally have to, like, clip pictures out, and then all these weird printing things that nobody would understand today.
Mm.
And my dad would go chase the stories and do the interviewing and take the photography, and then my mom would do the layout and the design. And again, as I got into my adulthood and started to hear some of these stories, I was like, oh, these seeds were not mine fully. They've been sown from generations in the past in these, fields in Kansas, and in my upbringing in Kansas City.
I love it. I love it. So, Guild, tell us
Yeah.
about Guild. You started it 10 years ago, and what was the motivation to start that business in particular?
Yeah. The story, I was at a spot. We've got, my wife and I have 5 kids, and they're the center of our world, and it's the best job ever, is to be a parent. I think it's just such a wonderful and challenging privilege, right? And responsibility. And I had an amazing job. I was working in the front office of the Kansas City Chiefs. Had access to really cool stuff, and we went to Super Bowls and had awesome clients and did really, really amazing things. And I genuinely loved it. And what's also true is these seeds. I love how you said that. These seeds were kind of springing up, and I was like, gosh, it's not that I don't like this job. I feel like there's something else for me, and I feel like there's an ability for me to chart my own course, hang my own shingle, whatever the analogy. Cut the ropes from the dock, and, like, see if this boat will sink or stay afloat. And I didn't really, clearly, I told you a bunch of other swings and misses I had. I didn't really know exactly what the what the specific business was, but I started to pay attention to what I loved to do, what I was kind of naturally inclined and, quote unquote, good at, and stuff that I saw was painful in the just normal common relationships I had. And so when we were in these Chiefs client meetings with these brands would say things like, "Hey, we're having a hard time telling our story," or we want to really connect to our clients. And I had read the book Story Brand by Donald Miller, which is a wonderful book that everybody in brand or leadership or marketing, whatever kind of language, should read. And in its most simple form, that book centers on this premise that the customer is the hero of the story. The company is not the hero of the story. The customer is the hero of the story. And so I read this book, and again, had a wonderful job. I wore not as nice of a sport coat as you have on, but I was like wearing sport coats and playing, playing at a high level in terms of like the corporate audience that we were selling to.
Mm,
And these humans who are in these very impressive positions kept saying things like, "We're really struggling to connect to our customers." And I was like, "Why is I don't understand. How quit talking about yourself, company. Talk about them. Connect to
mm,
their experience, connect to what they want, get to their desires, understand how your product or service or thing makes their life better. How's this that difficult?" And it took me honestly a couple years of seeing that conversation unfold to then get to the point where I had clarity of like, oh, that's how I see it. And they can't see it. They're not bad people. They're not working not enough or whatever. Like they don't have that awareness. And I
mm.
think I can help them shift the story just a little bit into the lens of how their customers experiencing this word, phrase, website copy, social media copy, whatever. And so all of that long-windedness to say like the white space was this pain because these companies were working really hard and throwing real budget at trying to solve the problem. But I was like, hey, if we can just take this story and turn the prism a little bit back to who's engaging it instead of who's telling it, I think you might sell more of your stuff. And sure enough, that's been the journey we've been on, and our business has evolved and frankly transformed and evolved several times in iterations through the almost 10 years. But it all started with that one seed. I love your language. It started with that one seed of, hey, companies have a story to tell, and most really struggle to tell it in a way that's compelling to the person receiving the story. And so we now have like a whole product and methodology and process that we can talk about if it's helpful. But that's where it all sprung up. Was kind of in this
Mm.
interesting landscape where I was like, I want to be around my family more. I want to have some flexibility. I want to see if I can do it. Because I tasted it a little bit with that other company that I referenced that I ended up getting fired from. And I think there's a real need in the market for corporate entities to tell stories that connect to their customers in a better way.
Love it. Love it. And so powerful. Just that phrase alone is
Mhm.
really so poignant. Sometimes
Mm,
one phrase
mm,
says so much and we
mm,
take it for granted, but this is
mm,
one
mm.
not to be taken for granted. So thank you. Um,
Yeah, of course.
so at Guild, you've been doing this for 10 years. I'm
Yeah.
sure there have been ups and downs.
Oh,
What's the high point? What's the low point?
oh goodness. Yeah, ups and downs for sure. It's such a gift, really. It really is a gift to be entrusted. And, in many ways, I feel like this thing found me, every bit as much as I found it. And I think the journey of entrepreneurship is such, if you allow it to be, it's such a interior work. The leader, him or herself, gets invited into this process where
Mm,
you um, change, where you face some stuff that's like really scary because there's no one. You can't blame the boss anymore or the board or the client. Like you kind of have to look in the mirror.
yeah.
The old Michael Jackson song, like the man in the mirror is the thing that is most likely most of the time the greatest strength of the business and the greatest problem in the business.
Mm,
And so to answer your question as directly as I can, the low points most of the time have centered around areas and moments in the journey when it was really scary, when payroll might not you might run out of payroll or money to make payroll, big client fired you or moved on to a different thing for whatever reason, a really key team member left unexpectedly for a different opportunity, and you're kind of left going, oh my gosh, like are we ever going to be able to replace that person, right? And so there have been plenty of those low moments, and I think what happens, and at least it's been my experience, what happens is that you don't know it at the time, but what starts to show up is you build the reservoir of resilience starts to get a little bit bigger. And so when you encounter those hard moments, which keep coming, you
uh-huh.
just you just take a deep breath and you're like, yeah, of course. Like of course it's gonna be hard. And we're gonna get through it because that's what we
Gotta
do. We
get
get
through it.
through it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then on the flip, there's what a gift just to see the high points of, um, especially when people that you employ grow and have opportunities, and they start to flourish and they start to show up in ways that they didn't when you first hired them. And there's so many examples of our current and past team that have come in at some level, right, in their career organization, and then they blossom into this other thing entirely, and you're like, my gosh, can you imagine what you're able to do now? And then a lot of times that ends up getting them recruited away.
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
which I used to take really personally. It used to be really hard because my ego would flare up and be like, oh my gosh, like I'd be scared and afraid. And we had this happen a month ago. One of our the guy leading our client group got approached by a bigger agency with bigger budget, and they recruited him away. And and when it all shook out, I'm like, dude, you should definitely go do that. Like, that's a great opportunity. And he didn't need my permission. He was going to go do that anyway.
Yeah.
But instead of this kind of fearful, scarce mentality, it's hard work for me, but it's starting to open up into this more abundant belief that, man, there is enough. It is okay. Life is good. There's a bunch of oxygen for everybody. And I think that's, I don't know if I answered your question, Mo.
No, I think that's, I was asking about high points, low points.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
I think caring so much about your people is and seeing them thrive being a high point is really admirable because that's who you're with every day for 50
that's
hours
right.
a week, maybe 60
Yeah.
hours a week, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think I'd be remiss to not say, there's so many moments when we're in a professional services organization that's in service to our customers. We call them partners, our clients.
Mm.
But every single time, we just today got a renewal on a 12-month agreement when the client has been with us many, many years, and we don't take it for granted that she said yes again.
Mm.
And so those deeply, trusted relationships where another human on behalf of an organization says yes to our business, it's like, ooh, they value us and we're a partner to them and their business growth and their business clarity. Those moments, we've got a bunch of examples of different clients who've said yes to us, but it's like, that's really special because you took it from something that didn't exist to now at a point where these brands are saying like, hey, we want to work with you. We have a lot of other choices, but we're choosing Guild. That means a lot.
Yeah. At what point after starting Guild did you finally take a deep breath or a sigh of relief and say, we've made it. This is working. This is my life's work now. I'm good with this business. I'm not worried about it going out of business.
Oh boy, Mo. Yeah, I don't, we definitely haven't made anything in terms of like final end result. So I'm not sure if I could say like, oh, we've made it. I do think there have been these big moments where, the first 2 or 3 years, I would always answer the question. If someone said like, hey, how's the business going? I would be like, well, there still is one, I'd say like some version of that, like, oh, there still is a business and it's kind of a shit show internally. We're figuring it out. And then, we went through the pandemic and actually our business took a big dive initially in the first couple months. And that was a bracing moment of like, oh, this is when I have to go get a job, right? Like that's what I thought was going to happen. And then we actually had a big spike after that for about 18 months, which is a whole different story. But I'd say, when a couple big moments come to mind. One is in July of 2022, we named Rachel Burnett our COO. And Rachel had started as a freelancer. She's one of the ones who's blossomed and become this like entirely other individual. And it's like, holy smokes, she's insane what she's able to accomplish here and just who she is. But she started as a freelancer, and then we offered her like a, mid-level job, and then she became a director, then a VP, and she just went on this path. And I read a book called Traction, and also joined. And I know we'll talk about this at some point. I joined a CEO group, a roundtable, and back to the Michael Jackson Man in the Mirror. I realized that I was creating lots of unnecessary mess in the business by holding on tight to things that I'm not very good at and I didn't find joy in. You know, that's a bad combo. If you don't get energy from it and you kind of suck at it, that's a bad mix. And,
And then you
and I
hold
was
on to it, that's even worse.
100%. And again, when I think it all happened the way it needed to happen. But for me to have the clarity of like, oh, I need an integrator. That's the EOS language,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
need an integrator to free me up to be a visionary. Vision is actually fairly, there's a bunch of people with ideas and vision. It's really difficult to be a good integrator.
Mm.
And we just happen to, thank God, have one of those, her, in our business. And so my wife Brooke and I started having these conversations of like, ooh, okay, I've made some messes here, all of which are able to get cleaned up. And there's a lot of really good, healthy things growing. But I need to get out of some of this day to day stuff that I'm not very great at anyway. And so, long and short, Rachel became Guild's first COO on July 1 of 2022. So we're at the 4 year mark right now.
Mm.
And that's really great. So that was a key moment. And then another key moment, and it's probably not like a day it happened, but over the last 24 months, we've done the really difficult work of simplifying our services.
Mm.
And, some would say like niching down. I heard another leader say niching up. And I was like, I
Uh-huh.
like that better because you actually have grown and we've gotten more abundant in our thinking by the ways that we've said no to stuff, which I was very much against early on. I was like, no, 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 we don't need to niche. We'll add stuff, we'll add people, we'll just sell more things, we'll get wide, we'll do a bunch of things because everybody's needing all these different services. And again, ultimately, that for me was based a little bit more on fear and scarcity, which sounds paradoxical because you think it's adding more to your business and it's actually diluting it. And so, if any early stage entrepreneurs are listening to this or watching this, if you consistently hear things about niching down in your environment, listen to them
Mm.
because for me, like that has just been such a freedom producing and in its most practical manner. Like I sleep better at night now that we have less things that we're selling,
Mm.
because we've gotten really clear on our process, our methodology, and we've created this really cool momentum that has benefited the business, but it's also benefited the people here because we're not in this constant like chase and scramble mode for the next deal or the next service or whatever. And so, anyway, those are a couple big moments in the business that have been pretty pivotal over the last few years.
I think that's a great lesson. And then, it's just one of those things that comes up over and over. It's you're starting a business and you want to grab every piece of revenue that you can, but you're not focused in the process of doing that and certainly
Yes.
not defined as
Yes.
a brand. I get it. I get it. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So you mentioned your CEO roundtable, and those are
Yeah.
certainly incredibly powerful groups. We call them
Yeah.
forums in some
Yep.
arena. They call them assemblies in other arena. But whatever
Yeah.
we call it, what is the effect? What is the forum
Mm.
effect on you? How has it impacted you personally, professionally? And then we'll talk about the broader effect. How have you benefited?
Yeah, I knew, and I was so excited about talking about this particular part with you because I know this is your love language, and you're so gifted at this area. Ours is called a forum. It's called the Leadership Forum. It's a gentleman named Joe Edwards who has built and sold a few businesses, and he's at the what I'd say maybe like the elder or mentor stage of his career where he he gets such energy and he gives such good counsel to people like me who are still in the trenches building the thing, right?
Mm.
And I got connected to Joe through a client and a mutual kind of connection between the two of us here in Kansas City. And I'm sure it was all over my face at the time in not awesome ways because it was in that transition of, hey, I think I need to put Rachel in charge here of the COO stuff. And so it was about that same period of time. And this gentleman was like, hey, you need to go have lunch with Joe Edwards. And I remember we met at the Cheesecake Factory in Overland Park for lunch, and I literally was running late. This is actually a very uh, it's very practical how I was just operating at such like frenetic pace, right? I was just like hustling all the time, pushing, trying to make it happen. And so I remember I didn't even have his cell phone number at the time. I just had his email from the calendar invite. And I sent him an email like probably while at a stoplight or whatever. I was like, Joe, I'm running 5 to 10 minutes late. I showed up like 13 minutes late. And he's sitting there and he looked like you. He's all dressed all dapper and, had his sport coat on. And I like jump into the booth and I was just running ragged. I was exhausted. And he asked me a few questions in that lunch that I was able to take a deep breath and say, yeah, I think I need some help. I've never done this before. The first time, I've done it at small scale, right? I screwed up the ticket thing or whatever, but I've never done this. We got 12 employees and we got, a lot of revenue coming in, and I don't really know what the balance sheet looks like actually. I don't know what our AR looks like.
Right.
He was asking enough questions that I was like, I don't know the answers to that. And then he's like, well, here's what this forum looks like. There's a group of 12 to 16, depending on the year and the quarter, other people like you who have been part of this connectivity, this fabric, this mosaic. They're not your employees. They're not your spouse. They're not your kids. They're not on your board. They're fellow sojourners on the entrepreneurial path. And none of them will be in your business. But if you want to consider this road, here's what it looks like. You get coaching from me and wisdom from the group, right? The collective. And frankly, the very first move, I was like, how much is this going to cost? I was like, what is this going to cost? It's not going to be cheap. And he talked to me about the pricing model, and I was like, can we pay quarterly? Actually, I think to this day we still pay him quarterly instead of biannually, which was his normal terms. All that to say, he was like, come check out the group. We meet at whatever, second Thursday of the month. Here's where it is. And I went to that first group, and Joe alone would be worth the price of the coaching and the conversation. But when I walked into that room, I just felt like I could let down. I could be myself. I could say like, hey, there's some stuff here about this business that's kind of messy that I wouldn't put on the website, but I'd talk to you guys about because you feel like you've been down this road. And the way I relate, the way I talk about that group now, like they've literally become like dear friends. Several have become clients. They're all mentors to some degree or another. And I like to joke that I'm the smallest house on the block of a really beautiful neighborhood, and I've just learned so much that you don't really get to, you can't, it's tough to put that like on a marketing piece, right? Of like, hey, join this group and here's all the benefits. But when you experience it over the last several years, you're like, man, I would do anything in the world for these people personally, and the way they've shaped me professionally and through the business. Of course, it's all related, or the human being in us is not able to separate personal and professional. It's just been a really beautiful gift. And I'll try to end the long-windedness with one specific moment. Last year at this time, we were being courted by a bigger group that wanted to have conversations about acquiring our business. And that's, again, first time. There's been some other, loose conversations, but it was the first time that it had some significant interest on my part. And I brought it to first my wife and then a couple good friends and then to this group. And I did talk to Rachel because she's a partner now in the business. And I'll never forget this gentleman in the group, after listening to me say, like, here's what's going on, here's what's happening, here's where we're at. He looked at me and he was like, do you, again, keeping in mind our 5 kids and the stage of life we're in, he's like, do you remember what it was like the first several years of building Guild? And I was like, Yep. All the stuff we just talked about. And he said, do you think the version of you that your family is getting now is something that they enjoy? And I was like, actually, yeah, I think so. I think that my presence, my ability to have some flexibility, um, is is really helpful and good. And he's like, if this thing happens, do you think the version of you that they will receive will be more like the first part of your entrepreneurial journey or this current one? And the reality was, like, part of the reason they wanted to acquire us is because they want us to be a piece of a thing that needs to get bigger.
Mhm. Mhm.
Which again, it's not bad. It's not a bad thing, and that may be a road we walk down someday. But in that moment, I was like, oh, that exact phrase, like you said earlier, that exact phrase. He said, the version of you your family receives right now is a gift to them. And we got kids in college and high school, and just last week I got to go to Indianapolis for 5 days to spend time with our youngest daughter in her volleyball tournament. And Brooke was there, and it was just, it's great.
Yeah.
I was like, I get to live my life.
Yeah.
So that was a long-winded answer to, like, people should join forums for sure, because it's such a gift to the full human experience of being an entrepreneur. Because you can't, and nor should you can't talk about that stuff with your team members, your wife or husband or spouse or partner. Like, they already hear it enough. They're living it. and
Yeah.
and you need those fellow builders or sojourners to help you see what you literally can't see because it's blind to you. You've never done it before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Justin, who's one person that has inspired you or one person you've looked up to for most of your life?
Ooh, that's a great question. Um, I mean, personally, no question about it. Like, number one, big circle around is my wife, Brooke. She just has transformed my life in so many ways. She's intuitive. She sees. She's discerning. She's wise. My mom and dad, 100%. My brother and sister. Professionally, like in the work context, I wrote this book called Give a Damn, and the protagonist in the book, it's a nonfiction story. It's real stories,
Mm.
but the protagonist in the book is this gentleman named Clyde Lear, and Clyde ended up selling this company called Learfield Sports, based in Jefferson City, little old Jefferson City, Missouri. And Clyde was the first person, in a traditional corporate context that I saw with true authority. As the CEO, he's the founder, right? He's true authority, big business, a lot of things happening, right for his company. But he matched his power or authority with this incredible care. And I didn't have the language for it at the time, but now I talk about that as having care as your competitive advantage. And Clyde would puff on this big old cigar, and he would ask real questions about me or about my wife or about our kids. And I was like, man, of course he wants me to be good at my job, but I think it's something deeper than that. I think this guy actually cares about me.
Mm.
And so, yeah, Clyde is up there in terms of, my Mount Rushmore of mentors. He's number one. He's George Washington.
And we got to give a shout out to Brooke, but how has Brooke influenced you?
Oh man, in an infinite number of ways, but it's specific to the business. And again, I've been a work in progress on this. I I think I think maybe not everybody. Maybe it's just my own experience, but generally, visionary type people, building minded type people think they see pretty clearly, um, and sometimes, at least for me, become stubborn to dissenting viewpoints or discerning viewpoints in Brooks' case. And there was a period of time, I'm not proud of it, but there's a period of time where I would hear her and be like, yeah, 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 cool. This is what we're doing. And I've learned that now a funny joke around our house is like, hey, what do you know now that everybody else will know in a decade? Like, will you just tell me now? Because I'm going to listen now. I used to not listen very well. So she's just been such a gift to her, literally just her voice. Like, I don't know if you've done any of the Working Genius profiling, but she's got discernment as kind of her one of her core strengths, and I don't. Discernment's in my competency.
Mm.
And so I have a bunch of ideas, and then I'll like get the people going around the ideas. And she's like this beautiful bridge of her discerning instincts are so good. So yeah, she's helped shape so much about just the way helps me slow down. She helps me see like other perspectives, and she's got her master's in counseling, so her therapy mindedness is sometimes frustrating when you want to run fast, but when you want to do it well and right and be discerning and thoughtful about it, she's been such a gift.
Love it. Last question, Justin. What does the future hold for Gildan and or Justin Ricklefs?
Oh boy, it's an awesome question, Mo. I think where I'm at right now is. Can I tell one more story?
Yeah, love your
um,
story.
last summer, I went to this monastery in northern Missouri called Conception Abbey, and it's a Catholic monastery. I'm not Catholic, but they were incredibly welcoming. And a good friend who's actually on the other side of this window, his name's Gary. He had been there, and Gary was like, "Hey, at some point, you should go spend a few days there." And one thing led to the next. I get busy, whatever. And then last July, I got to go up there for 2 days, and they have a program they call the really straightforward silent retreat. So you 48 hours, no phone, no laptop, no meetings, no talking. You can't talk, which, as you can tell from our time
Be a
together,
challenge for you.
challenge for me.
Be a challenge for me.
Yep, and you get to just be in the environment and listen and receive and process and journal and read whatever. Anyway, all that to say, I realized how exhausted I was, one, and then also how much, which again, there's just both and all this stuff. There's some really lovely parts of being future oriented, and it also has some dark sides to it. And typically, Mo, it's so simple for me to be like, oh yeah, 5 years is what we'll be doing, and I maybe write a couple more books, and hopefully the business has grown to a certain point. And again, those answers aren't bad. But for me these days, I'm just like, I have no idea. I want to be fully, to the extent that I can, I want to be present. That's become one of these core values for me is presence. I want to be in the moment. I want to be grounded. I want to be here. I want to be grateful. I want to be abundant in my belief right now. Not just always banking on the future. Because that's, I think, again, there's pros and cons and good and bad and helpful and unhelpful to all this. But for so many years, I was so future focused of like, yeah, chase this, do this, go build this. This is going to be what it's like at some point. And now I'm like, man, we've got a 22-year-old at the front of our line and a 14-year-old at the back of the line. Like life is amazing, like today, like right now. And that is shifting in me towards how do I just show up with more presence instead of some like, I got to go chase or accomplish. And I'm hopeful that the byproduct of the presence is that we get to build a big, healthy, beautiful thing. But I'm learning that I don't need that to be okay today.
Such wisdom. Thank you, Justin Ricklefs. Thank you to our audience. And as a reminder, podcast reviews have a real impact on a podcast visibility. So please leave a review to help others find the show. Finally, you could find all our episodes on our website, Mo Fathelbab. That's our gateway website, mofathelbab.com. Thanks for listening and have a wonderful day.